Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Akhilesh Suman and you are watching Special Report. In this episode of Special Report, we are going to show you the challenges and opportunities of BRICS. That is a grouping of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa.
Issues that affect the global balance of power hold special significance at BRICS Forum. The situation will be no different at BRICS Summit that starts on 17th November this year. Hosted by Russia, the 12th BRICS Summit will be chaired by President Vladimir Putin. BRICS is represented by 5 big economic regions of the world. While 2 of them are permanent members of UN Security Council, 3 are aspiring to occupy that position. This gives the grouping enormous potential to contribute towards both world peace and its development. It's reflected in the agenda for 12th Summit, which includes partnership for global stability, shared security, and innovative growth.
It will be held under the motto BRICS Partnership for Global Stability, Shared Security, and Innovative Growth, which reflects comprehensive and long-term commitment to supplement a response of the global community to current challenges and to increase potential of cooperation for the sake of well-being of the peoples of the 5 nations. During this summit, the leaders are expected to approve the BRICS counter-terrorism strategy, which would allow to work out common measures and more closely coordinate in the United Nations and other fora. Then, Economic Partnership Strategy till 2025, practical launch of the Energy Research Cooperation Platform and Women Business Alliance, establishment of the BRICS International Competition Policy Center, expansion of partnership in areas such as interparliamentary direction.
BRICS also has another agenda, that is global governance, that is reforming global institutions and having a greater say for the emerging economies in the process of global governance. So it is taking into account these things that the Russians have decided on this theme.
Members of BRICS include Brazil, the biggest country in Latin America, Russia, the largest landmass of the world, India, the largest democracy, China, the most populated nation and the biggest manufacturer in the world, and South Africa, one of the most significant African countries. For the developing world, BRICS hold an important message as a non-Western pole that can be vanguard for underdeveloped and poor countries.
These are formed because of some specific reasons for addressing specific issues of countries which see the same problem in the same light. Or in other words, if I have to put it, they are on the same page on many issues. And they have a feeling that they have common issues and they can find common solutions.
In the beginning, there was only BRIC. This group included only Brazil, Russia, India and China, and the largest markets of the world. The idea for the forum came from Jim O'Neill, the chief economist with Goldman Sachs in 2001. O'Neill pitched for speedy growth of these economies in order to play an important role in world development. According to a written reply in Lok Sabha by then Minister of State for External Affairs, V.K. Singh, the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India and China, idea was first conceived in the year 2001 by Goldman Sachs as part of economic modeling exercise to forecast global economic trends over the next half century. As a formal grouping acknowledging the leadership role played by each of the BRICS countries and the growing contribution to the global economy, the first meeting of BRICS foreign ministers was held on the margins of United Nations General Assembly in New York in the year 2006. The first BRICS summit was held in Yekaterinburg, Russia in the year 2009. The first BRICS summit in 2009 discussed global governance, especially in the field of economy and finance. It sought reforms in the IMF, the World Bank, and the G20 decision-making process. The second summit in 2010 in Brasilia focused on cooperation in energy and infrastructure financing. This led to World Bank and the IMF to increase their lending to BRIC countries. In order to represent Africa, a decision was taken to expand BRIC in 2010. Consequently, South Africa joined the grouping on 24 December 2010 and in 2011 took part in BRICS Summit in Sanya City in Hainan province of China.
On the face of it, South African economy is not comparable to the other four. But why South Africa was brought in was the philosophy of BRICS was this was grouping not based on a region or a language or anything. This was spread out into all continents. And the great continent of Africa, which has a lot of potential today, was left out in the sense that it was not a part of the group. So they thought that, okay, the biggest economy of Africa can be brought in. At that time, South Africa was the biggest economy in Africa.
The 2011 BRICS Summit took up UN Security Council reforms, an issue that has featured in all subsequent summits. Similarly, the grouping has never failed to condemn terrorism. At the same time, efforts have been made to address political concerns of member nations. Over the years, India has expressed satisfaction with the steady growth in cooperation among the Big Five nations that combine a mix of healthy idealism and practicality.
Indeed, BRICS can become an effective tool of multipolarity in the world, both in economic and political terms, with 27% of world land area and 42% of population. And India is enthusiastically working towards this goal.
In his written reply to Member of Parliament Ram Mohan Naidu, Kinjarapu, VK Singh asserted that BRICS countries were cooperating on issues of common concerns. All members of BRICS grouping benefit from its collective strength by way of consultation and cooperation on economic issues of mutual interest, as well as topical global issues such as SDGs, international terrorism, climatic change, food and energy security, reform of global governance institutions, trade and tax, health, traditional medicines, labor, disaster management, anti-corruption, information and communication technology, customs cooperations, industries, and so on. In addition, BRICS countries are cooperating in people-to-people format on culture, sports, youth, cinema, academics, tourism, skill development, science, technology, and innovation.
That BRICS started as a geo-economic group. The very fact that Jim O'Neill identified the four countries because they were the fastest growing economy. But very soon, BRICS realized that you cannot really cleanly divide geoeconomics from geopolitics. And BRICS naturally evolved into a geopolitical group. And today, BRICS is not shy of giving geopolitical statements.
The grouping followed a charter of working for all-round development of member countries while also extending help to non-member countries. The BRICS nation felt the economic consolidation would be the best way to forward to ensure these results. Accordingly, the idea of BRICS Bank was mooted. It came into existence on 18th of July 2014 in the summit at Brazil's Fortaleza city. Called the New Development Bank with headquarters in Beijing, Indian banker K.V. Kamath was its first president. Explaining its goal to Parliament, Union Minister V.K. Singh said, "The New Development Bank has come into existence with the vision of mobilizing resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and other emerging economies and developing countries to supplement the existing efforts of multilateral and regional financial institutions for global growth and development. The NDB helps India and other member countries to raise and avail resources for their infrastructure and sustainable development projects."
You look at the statistics. The World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the South American Development Bank, all these banks put together, still there was a annual deficit of almost $50 billion needed for infrastructure, particularly in Asia and Africa. There was a lack of funds for infrastructure projects. That was one reason. The second reason was that the structure and the operational procedures of the World Bank and the other multilateral development bank, they were actually loaded a little bit in favor of the developed Western country.
Compared to developed economies, the 5 BRICS economies are placed at different stages of development in view of their vulnerability to global financial conditions and market. The BRICS countries set up a contingent reserve arrangement of $100 billion to shield themselves from financial contingency or liquidity crisis.
Finance is a major power, and the creation of BRICS Bank, that is New Development Bank, prompted the member nations to cooperate on institutional level. It solidifies the relationship among the nations if you are cooperating financially, and it also attracts the developing world to create a confidence for you.
By mid-2019, the New Development Bank approved financing for 44 infrastructure projects. This totaled about $13 billion. The BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement totaled $100 billion. Further, BRICS created a system to exchange macroeconomic information for easy flow of financial data. NDB loans, in contrast to IMF and the World Bank, are easy.
The procedural aspect of the New Development Bank is much simpler, and particularly for green infrastructure projects, it is very easy to get loans from the New Development Bank. And the New Development Bank is also experimenting with new instruments, like they are giving loans in local currency.
In principle, the BRICS nations have agreed to trade in each other's currency to reduce dependency on dollars. While this hasn't been implemented practically, the assumption itself is significant for future if BRICS payment system has to be an effective alternate to SWIFT money transaction system led by Europe and America. Kirill Dmitriev, the member of BRICS Business Council, told reporters on 14 November 2019 in Moscow, "An efficient BRICS payment system can encourage payments in national currencies and ensure sustainable payments and investment among our countries, which make up to over 20% of global inflow of foreign direct investment."
Contingent currency arrangement is operational. New financial initiatives are promotion of BRICS data room for infrastructure projects and an integrated payment system, BRICS Pay. Focus to expand use of national currencies remains. We are looking forward to support the Indian chairmanship in BRICS in 2021.
India hosted the 4th BRICS Summit in New Delhi in 2012. Its theme was political. The summit demonstrated the growing bonhomie of the member nations. For the first time, an explicit theme of BRICS partnership for global stability, security and prosperity was discussed and adopted. The summit challenged the global governance model and sought a place for developing countries as heads in IMF and the World Bank. This summit also signed an agreement to facilitate intra-BRICS trade in local currency.
Almost 30% of intra-BRICS trade now is carried in local currencies, either the ruble or the rupee or the yuan of China. It's a very practical thing that if you trade in local currencies, the operational costs goes down drastically. Instead of going through the dollar, where you pay both while buying the dollar and selling the dollar at both ends of the transaction, there is a lot of money wasted in transaction.
The 5th BRICS Summit in 2013 in Durban and the 6th one in 2014 at Fortaleza centered on global economic issues again. The 7th Summit in Russia's Ufa city in 2015 was also an extension of economic and financial agenda. The roadmap to diversify trade and investment between member countries was approved at this summit. The 8th and the 9th summits in Goa and China's Xiamen in 2016 and 17 respectively were centered on implementing earlier financial and economic agreements as well as to strengthen the New Development Bank. The 11th BRICS Summit was held in Brasilia in 2019 on the theme of economic growth for the innovative future. The summit expanded cooperation among BRICS nations by centering on cooperation in science, technology and innovation, digital economy, the fight against transnational crime, especially organized crime, money laundering and drug trafficking, and encouragement to cooperation between the New Development Bank and the BRICS Business Council. Holding regular annual summit is one of the major success of BRICS, which indicates its intent to expand its cooperation.
The major challenge, however, is to create unity of thoughts and actions on major global issues. Issues like reform of United Nations Security Council, reform of nuclear suppliers group, on issues like Indo-Pacific, also on terrorism and territorial integrity of member nations.
The 12th BRICS summit will have to find answers to such questions. This summit is taking place at a time when China is trying to encroach into India's territory. India doesn't raise bilateral issues in multilateral forum, but since shared security is one of the themes of this BRICS summit, the incidents on our borders will have an impact on issues concerning territorial sovereignty.
Given the potential and opportunities of these 5 BRICS nations, COVID-19 pandemic had given an opportunity to these nations to cooperate in a manner that could have been unmatched by any other groupings of the world. But did we miss the era? Because at the time when whole world was trying to get rid of COVID-19 pandemic, it was China who was trying to intrude inside Indian territory.
BRICS is an area where rise of China and India would have complemented each other, but shockingly enough, at a time when the world was in grip of pandemic, Chinese soldiers tried to intrude into the line of actual control on Ladakh border. It overshadowed the opportunities of collective leadership by BRICS in a post-corona period.
We are naturally concerned with the India-China current tensions. However, we believe that peaceful solution is inevitable. Better sooner than later. Both are global and responsible neighboring powers with huge economic, manpower, defense potential, as well as civilizational wisdom. It is clear that amid global turbulence and unpredictability, escalation between India and China would further affect regional instability in our common home, Eurasia, while escalation, as we are witnessing, can be misused by other players in their geopolitical purposes.
With medicines, medical equipment, expertise, India has helped the world navigate the pandemic in many ways. More than 150 rich and poor countries benefited from the cooperation. Vaccine makers are working with India, while India has pledged to share its own vaccine with other countries. But within the BRICS, this cooperation on pandemic is missing.
The most important thing will be the post-COVID recovery, because all the BRICS countries have been affected. So BRICS has to take some initiatives. Some creative ideas have to come in to kick back the growth that has been lagging. So after the COVID, what is the best way to get back to, if not a high trajectory growth, at least a medium trajectory growth?
On 4th of September 2020, the foreign ministers of BRICS met through video conferencing, while the cooperation among member nations was discussed in the context of COVID-19. On the ground, it did not come together.
We have to cooperate, and I believe they are going to have, I read somewhere that this summit will also deal with an integrated early warning system to combat potential pandemics in the future.
Even though the West criticized China for mismanaging the outbreak of virus, the spread all over the world, India stayed away from the blame game. Unfortunately, its statesmanship was not reciprocated by China.
When two of the BRICS members have this kind of tension, and there are questions of sovereignty and territorial integrity, naturally, I mean, you can't push it under the carpet. There will be what is called a trust deficit. So at present, we can be very frank, there is a trust deficit with China as far as India is concerned.
One of the biggest challenges before BRICS today is Indo-Pacific region. China's attitude of intimidating neighboring countries into Indo-Pacific by claiming the entire South China Sea can't be sustainable. India has always sought free and rule-based behavior in South China Sea. Russia has cited US interference in the region to disregard China's action. South Africa and Brazil are too far away from the region to speak on the issue.
That it's too early to expand this strategy to the whole region, and a comprehensive, forward-looking, all-inclusive dialogue would be further required. We are ready for that, but it should be based on the principles of undivided security and international law rather than some rules-based world order. These are numerous cases when these so-called rules were aimed against Russia and other sovereign countries to justify unilateral sanctions, attempts to interfere in domestic affairs, and regime change.
United Nations Security Council reforms are an issue where China's intentions became suspect, despite the fact that in all BRICS summit, reforms of United Nations Security Council is a crucial agenda item and becomes part of summit statements. In truth, China doesn't show any support to the prospects of enlarging the Security Council.
This is rather strange that we call BRICS a very united group, but they can't come to a common position, or they cannot articulate a common position on this very critical question on global governance, that is UN Security Council expansion.
NSG is another issue on which China doesn't go with its BRICS partner India. China tries to oppose India and doesn't recognize its needs, all the while trying to fulfill the agenda of Pakistan.
If you want to create BRICS for global impact, you have to work with BRICS nations on political issues also. A strong BRICS will incorporate a strong member nations, but the way China behaves and opposes India's membership to NSG has surprised everyone. Is it the right way to create a strong BRICS?
BRICS could have become a counterweight to the G7 grouping. It could have also spelled out an alternative economic grouping of countries following different models of governance. But so far, those aims haven't been realized due to bilateral differences. So adopting a zero-conflict model of cooperation and creating a culture of non-interference in neighbors' internal affairs can be the way to strengthen the BRICS.
Indeed, BRICS is not a platform to resolve bilateral issues. But if you have strong differences, you cannot emerge as a strong organization. You cannot feel like a friend and act like an enemy. So BRICS nations would have to think about it. And that's all in this report from Akhilesh Suman with camera person Jitendra Negi and assistant Lalan Yadav for Rajya Sabha Television.